Well, I asked the Speaker of the House about that, and we'll get to that in just a moment. But first, I spoke with Nancy Pelosi for a headliner special that's going to air next month. And I asked her about whether or not a conservative Republican stepping up on impeachment of the president moves the meter for her. Take a look. News of the day, Justin Amash's position on impeachment. He's tweeted more today. He's come right back at the president. Does it fit the bar for bipartisan support for impeachment?
Well, the bipartisan support for impeachment has to be in the Senate.
Yeah.
In terms of Congressman Amash, his voice speaks to the silence of so many all the other Republicans not to hold this president accountable for the oath of office that he takes to protect and defend the Constitution, respecting the co-equal branches of government. So Amash may be one voice, but the fact that it is in the absence of other voices, it speaks very loudly.
So doesn't it put more pressure on you that a conservative Republican says the threshold for impeachment has been met?
No.
No?
No.
Why?
Well, we have to, we're not, this isn't about politics, it's not about passion, it's not about prejudice, it's not about politics, it's about patriotism, and it's about the presentation of the facts so that the American people can see why we're going down a certain path. And it is, I don't know, I feel very confident that the American people know that they deserve to know the truth, and that's what we want to present to them in a way that they don't perceive to be without the presentation of the facts.
Should Congress be working to impeach Barr, who lied and committed perjury before the eyes of Congress?
The fact that the Attorney General of the United States would lie to Congress under oath, again, we're on the path of contempt for him.
You are?
That's what I would hope.
The definition of subpoena is literally under penalty. What is the penalty for refusing to respond to a subpoena? Is there one?
Well, it depends. It depends. In other words, in the Nixon articles of impeachment, Article 3 is that he did not honor the subpoena of the Congress of the United States. So that is an issue. But the other part of it is there are many paths. Before they got to that place at that time, they had long investigation. And that's what we're doing now, to see where that takes us. And if they refuse to honor their oaths of office, then we have some options available to us. One in particular is, they're saying you have no purpose for these subpoenas. Well, under the Constitution, one of the purposes would be to see if you want to go down the path of impeachment. There are other purposes as well.
So what did you learn talking to the
Well,
Speaker
so much
yesterday?
about her life and what an inspiration she is and how smart she is, how confident she is, and how disciplined she is. There's no doubt that everything that has happened in her life has brought her to this moment and that she is the ultimate challenge for President Donald Trump. And what's so interesting is it's very clear. She has deep feelings about his lack of fitness for office. Deep feelings, very clear feelings. But she is not driven by that. She's driven by what's best for the country, what best process to follow so that people can feel, the American people can feel that they are represented in this process. So while impeachment seems like the easy way to go, because there are guardrails, there are systems, and there are definitely processes that she can trigger to hold this president accountable, she really feels that getting the facts and the process of getting the facts is far more important so that the people can understand what has happened in this presidency. Susan Page, Nancy Pelosi is in a very interesting situation because at the same time, Congress is supposed to hold the president accountable. And there's a lot of ways that he is pushing through guardrails.
You know, it's so interesting. Nancy Pelosi has warned that President Trump is trying to goad House Democrats into impeachment. I think that's true, and I think in a way it's working. We know that Nancy Pelosi faces increasing pressure from some House Democrats to go the impeachment route. But I think the most important thing in that court decision that came out yesterday on subpoenas is that the judge explicitly said that you do not have to have an impeachment proceeding to enforce a subpoena for those financial records, that the Congress has a legitimate purpose in going after them. And that, I think, gives Nancy Pelosi some breathing room, because you heard in your interview how reluctant she continues to be about choosing that path, that particular path, impeachment, in moving ahead, because she understands that there are some significant costs, risks for Democrats if they do that.
So, Mike Barnicle, underlining the fact that Nancy Pelosi is right and is calling the shots right, as she has really from the beginning of her term as Speaker of the House. Trip Gabriel's article in the New York Times on a visit to Youngstown, which Democrats in Congress, Democrats running for president would all do themselves a great disservice if they do not read this article and understand the importance of it. Here's sort of the key line out of it. While Democrats harp on Trump's unfitness for office, his taxes, and impeachment, the president is solidifying blue-collar support through an aggressive trade war with China, even if his tariffs mean economic pain in the short term. And let's boil it down to one line, Mike, that Democrats need to write on their wall this morning. One Youngstown working class voter who was struggling said, I don't give a damn about Donald Trump's tax returns. I give a damn about my job.
There's not only that, Joe, in that Trip Gabriel piece in the Times, there's also the quote from another Youngstown resident who says he likes tough guys as president. He's tired of being pushed around by by other countries, by China, and that Trump doesn't, allow that. But wow, these past 20 minutes, there's a lot to unpack here in this story. There's a lot of moving parts, Joe. We've moved from the Congress to the Attorney General of the United States to the president last night in Montoursville, Pennsylvania, to congressional hearings, to Don McGahn not going. And you have to wonder, out there in the country, in Youngstown, Ohio, people watching and listening to this, do they really grasp the importance of what's going on? I think probably at some level they do, but on a day-to-day basis they don't. And this story, for the Democrats to achieve some sense of victory or standing in this story, they need to improve their narrative. They need a storyteller, and they need Bob Mueller to appear before the House to testify. That's what they need. That's what this story needs in terms of the Democratic Party being able to achieve any goal that they wish.
And they still would like him to get up there. You know, Joe, Mika used the word discipline, talking about Nancy Pelosi. Right after she left that interview with Mika, the Speaker of the House went into a meeting where she heard from a lot of fellow Democrats, many of them on the Judiciary Committee, who said, because of this McGahn news, it's time now to open impeachment proceedings. So to hear Speaker Pelosi still have, as Mika said, the discipline to sit in and say, not yet, let's work our way to get there. She knows, she's been around long enough, she understands Donald Trump well enough to know that he's baiting them into impeachment proceedings because it's a dead end in the Senate, as we've said many times. It might feel good. Since January 20th, 2017, many progressives have been beating the drum of impeachment. Nancy Pelosi is playing the long game here.
Well, and playing the long game, and Willie, listen, I understand why the Democrats are frustrated and angry, why they feel like, unlike a lot of independents and some Republicans who still really care about Madisonian democracy and constitutional norms, are really disturbed by Donald Trump. But this is Donald Trump's game. It is the game he's been playing, and we've known him, all of us have known him for over a decade. We've seen him politically for three and a half years. But it wasn't really until the last couple months that it really became so obvious that every tweet that he sends out to shock people is intended for a shocking headline. Yeah. He wants to shock people.
He creates
chaos. He
wants
to bait people. He wants people to call him evil. He wants people to tear their hair out and be out of control so he can laugh them off. A great example during the campaign that comes to mind. Nikki Haley in South Carolina endorses Marco Rubio. Marco Rubio, of course, is the only person by that point that Donald Trump thinks is a challenge. So what does Donald Trump do? He attacks the Pope. Now, do you think any headlines the next morning were about Nikki Haley's endorsement of Marco Rubio? No, he attacks the Pope. When he said Mika was bleeding badly from a facelift and said all of these lies, and he was condemned all weekend, the worst condemnation he had received up to that point by Republicans, Democrats, press alike. Monday morning, a staff member went up to him and politely tried to tell him he was off base. He turned and he snapped to him. He said, "Hey, how many negative stories did you read on North Korea this weekend?" This is, he's a one-trick pony. It is to shock people, have Democrats in the media respond to that shock, which I certainly understand because we do it every day, and then feed off of that with his supporters. And so you're right. I mean, Nancy Pelosi knows that he's becoming more outrageous because he's trying to bait them into an impeachment process that allows him to point to Democrats in Washington and say, look what they're doing. They're playing political games. Me, I'm fighting China for you. I'm fighting North Korea for you. I'm fighting those Europeans that are stealing your jobs for you, Youngstown, Ohio. You know, vote for me again.
Well, Nancy Pelosi is unflinching.
If you read Trip Gabriel's story, it's working.
And that's not to say, Mika, that impeachment proceedings may not be appropriate here. That's what they'll look into. But we're just talking about Donald Trump's tactics.
It is a balancing act. And it's very tough. But, Mika, as you saw yesterday, Nancy Pelosi is up to the task, to say the least.
There's a reason he's afraid of her, and I saw it myself. I was just, this is one hurdle he'll never surmount, and that is the Speaker of the House. It ends with her. All of it. Still ahead on Morning Joe, over the past few days, President Trump has both opened the idea of talks with Iran and threatened to wipe that country off the map. We'll get an update on where things stand today, thanks to his rhetoric. You're watching Morning Joe. We'll be right back.
Thanks for checking out MSNBC on YouTube, and make sure you subscribe to stay up to date on the day's biggest stories. And you can click on any of the videos around us to watch more from Morning Joe and MSNBC. Thanks so much for watching.